Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Brandon Laws. I'm the Director of Marketing at Xenium HR, and today our webinar topic is Talent Engine, the secret to recruiting and retaining the best of the best. And we have a special guest presenter with us today, Sean Bussey. He is a CEO and founder of Kinesis. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Kinesis, they're local to Portland, Oregon, and they're the only marketing firm dedicated exclusively to help service-centric companies grow. They enable companies to have basically an entire marketing department led by a chief marketing officer for less than the price of one full-time employee. So they do a lot of great work. Before I turn it over to Sean, I wanted to mention a couple questions that we often get are, is this recorded? And yes, it absolutely will be. So if you get disconnected or you have to jump off early, definitely look for the recording in an email. And then the other question we get is, how long does this go? The presentation Sean will give will go from about 10 to 10:30, 35-ish, and then we'll do Q&A for about 10, 15 minutes, and we'll end right at 10:45. I know you have busy lives and busy work days, so definitely want to provide you some great content and then get on with your day. If you have any questions throughout the presentation or you have something for Sean, definitely put it in the chat window. I'll be monitoring those, and then during the Q&A portion, I'll relay those to Sean. So without further ado, Sean Bussey, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Brandon. Really appreciate you setting this up and inviting us to be part of this. I'm really passionate about this topic and excited to share this with everybody on the call here. And I'm going to go relatively quickly, probably faster than I normally would in a normal presentation, because I want to leave time at the end for the Q&A. There's a lot of material here. A lot of it's the result of many years of working on this idea of recruiting and retention and really employee engagement. And so I'm going to be condensing a lot of things. I'm going to go fast. I would say that if there's something that catches your eye and I don't touch on it in depth, then type it into the question window, and hopefully Brandon will be able to get it to me at the end of the dialogue. And even if there's not time today, I'll put some contact info at the end of the deck, as well as some resources that you can reference afterwards. So I thought I'd start out with a bit of a parable. And the internet and cats, they sort of seem to go hand in hand. So I thought I would tell a short story about cats. In Japan, there are these little islands. They're called cat islands, and they're places where the cats actually outnumber the number of humans. And this photo here is actually a real photo. It's not photoshopped. And what's going on here is that cats are a bit of a symbol of good luck, and so they're just allowed to run free, and the people there feed them, and it's kind of this crazy phenomenon. And in many ways, it's a bit like how we think about hiring, and in some ways how we think about the whole process of recruiting. And what I call this is sort of the conventional wisdom, and it goes a little bit like this. If we want to grow, if we're a company and we're looking to grow, we need two things. We generally need more customers, and we need customers to spend more money with us, and we need more candidates. We need more employees to service those customers. And in many ways, this seems like a logical choice, right? I was at a meeting the other day where a business executive was talking to the owner about how they had just put a new ad on Craigslist and LinkedIn, and they had gotten over 170 applications. And somebody raised the question, well, how does the candidate pool look? And he kind of looked uncomfortable, and I realized that in those 170 applications, I don't know that he even had really that many good applications. And so you've got this major investment in time, and many of us here on this call today are responsible for the hiring process, myself included. There's a bunch of HR folks on this call, and we know that the act of hiring is a giant resource drain in many ways on a company. And so I use this cat story as a bit of a parable that more does not really equal better when it comes to seeking out candidates. That really what our philosophy is about, and what I think is really the right approach, is looking for that right fit employee and finding that employee who's going to be successful at your company. So a little story about my company, Kinesis, to help you understand how I've gotten to this place on this journey. Kinesis has been around for about 16 years. We started in 2000, started in one recession. We survived a giant recession more recently. About 5 or 6 years ago, I started to ask this question, like, how is it some companies are successful and they grow and they thrive, they have just this tremendous financial outcomes, but the employees seem happy? And so we started actually studying that concept, and we started to try to understand, what makes a high-performing company. And so in many ways, what I've done is I've used Kinesis as a bit of an experiment. And this 5-6 year experiment that I've been conducting on ourselves has yielded some pretty amazing results. Aside from the fact that we're thriving and growing, and you look at photos like this, and we're doing lots of fun activities, and we're going skydiving and having great company offsites. There's a lot more to it than that, and what I want to share with you is a little bit about what we found in terms of what works. And these next 2 slides here that I'm going to share with you are from a couple of different sources. The first one is from a Towers-Watson survey that was done, I think in 2010. And what it was looking at was, it was looking at highly engaged companies. It was looking at companies where the employees, they showed up to work, they didn't just do their job, they actually were the type of employee that was looking around and asking, how can I help? How can I make things better? And when I started on Kinesis's journey, which ultimately became a journey that we would bring our clients along, we started asking those same questions. How do we get these great employees, but what are the results they produce? And in this Towers-Watson study, which is pretty fascinating, what they did is they broke the companies that they studied into 4 groups. So there was the top quartile, meaning the most highly engaged companies where the employees were really motivated and really showed up every day enthusiastically. Then there was the middle 2 quartiles, where it's more of they came to work, they were appreciative of their job, they did the job, they left on time, they showed up on time, but the level of engagement wasn't as high as the top. And then at the bottom, which you would call the disengaged quartile. So those were the businesses where there was gossip, there was backbiting, there was within the company, just real dysfunction in terms of employee engagement. And so what they found is they compared these 4 quartiles towards each other, and they tracked them over time. What they found is that the top quartile, they grew by 19%, but what's actually, I think, even more powerful is that the bottom quartile contracted by 33%. So you've got this massive vector between these 2 organizations, one which focuses on engaged employees, and the other one which is not focused on engaged employees at all, and is really quite a dysfunctional organization. And as we started to look at this deeper, we started to see that this was really in many places. So, for example, there's a great study by Will Phelps out of the University of Washington, which looked at the high cost of the bad apples. So the bad apple employees being those that are really part of that disengaged quartile, that are those employees that are really, in many ways, sabotaging what you're trying to do as a business leader, and the impact that those disengaged employees would have on the performance of a team was anywhere from 30 to 40%. And what's even worse about that is that when you had a disengaged employee, you couldn't offset them by hiring top performers and engaged employees. You actually can't really counteract the effect of bad with good. And so as as I started to learn more about, these sort of organizational dynamics and the financial costs of these organizational dynamics, the more I looked into it, the more I realized that, yes, you can focus on trying to change the organization. That's really hard, but really the most effective place you can go in terms of making the organization highly functional is in the hiring process, is that you can make sure that none of the bad apples ever get into the business, and that you're trying to recruit and retain really the shining stars. And so what a lot of this discussion today is going to be about is about that process of recruiting those shining stars, and also creating a culture and a presentation of a culture that causes those stars to raise their hand and say, hey, I want to be a part of this. And in case any of you are looking for more information to make the case here, or to have a conversation with your leadership team or your fellow executives, this is another project that came out in 2012. It's the Gallup State of the American Workplace, with some pretty profound data points around what these high performers achieve in an organization. So higher profitability, fewer quality defects, fewer safety incidents. So really, it's about getting those great employees in the door and then keeping them. And how do you do that? And I think a lot of you are here today because you want to improve yourselves. You're taking time out of your day to become a better leader, and I applaud that. And what my goal is to help you and give you some tactics that you can use, as well as maybe some overarching strategies that you can apply to your organization. Now, we've got some folks on the call today that are from the Fortune 100. We've got some folks who have 5 employees. So it's tough to build a model that works for everybody. But I think what you'll find, especially when I show you this concept of the candidate's journey, that there's really a way to approach this, that it doesn't matter how big you are or how small you are. It doesn't matter if you have a ton of money to put towards this, or if you have no money to put towards this. Really, it's about a strategy, and in many ways, it's a bit of a marketing strategy. So I like to say that one of the things Kinesis does here is we try to take HR and marketing and have them get together and hug one another. And I know that's not normally thought of. It's sort of like the marketing people are over there doing their thing and trying to get customers, and the HR people are over here trying to keep things under control and bring in new employees, and the two don't necessarily talk. But I think if we start thinking about how the two can help one another, what happens is that the business starts to thrive as the result of really changing the culture and changing the type of employees that we're looking to attract. So 2 of my key resources, I'm sure many of you have read one or both of these books. If you haven't, I highly recommend them, especially the book by Dan Pink on the left there about motivation and what employees need to stay sustained in a workplace, things like autonomy, mastery, and purpose. I don't want to go too far into that book, but a great read if you haven't read it already. And then the second one is top grading. And top grading, the philosophy of top grading is that you're looking to hire the top 10% of candidates within a salary range. And it's a little bit of a dry read, but it's a great strategy for really getting to the cream, if you will. And I think putting those 2 things together, along with a bunch of other resources that I'll share at the end, I've put together what I would say sort of the rules of hiring, and there's 4 of them, and they're relatively straightforward. I think many of you are going to go, yes, got it, I know that, I'm aware of that, but some of you won't, and I think some of you may sort of have maybe a new perspective on this. And so the first rule is that great people are almost always already employed. I found this to be true in my 16 years of hiring people. I found this to be true almost universally with our clients. There are a few exceptions. There are times when somebody makes a life change, or maybe was subject to an unexpected layoff. There's always going to be exceptions, but in general, the vast majority of your great candidates are going to have a job. And so that's going to impact how you work your strategy, and especially as the economy has improved and labor force has tightened, as the baby boomers are retiring and there's fewer and fewer of them to draw from. Gen X is too small to really staff all those positions, and so now we're looking at we're looking at millennials, and there's a lot of them, but where are they at? So thinking about that the people you want to hire generally are going to be employed. And then the second piece, this is straight out of Drive, Daniel Pink's book, autonomy, the ability to work without micromanagement. They're looking for mastery, the ability to get better at their job, and they're looking for purpose, something that's greater than themselves. So thinking about how can I provide those things both in the day-to-day work that I do, but also in my search for candidates. How do I communicate that we provide those things? And I'll talk a little bit more about how to do that. Number 3, great people are usually pulled into a new career rather than pushed into a new career. So again, they usually have a job, but often that job isn't providing them the satisfaction they need, and so they're attracted towards a new direction. So keeping in mind that you're not going to get somebody to come work for you necessarily because they've been kicked out of a job, but what you may want to think about is how can I make this an attractive thing that they're looking to become a part of. And then lastly, I think great employees look for alignment on values. They may not say it directly, but in general, when you have values alignment within an organization and within teams that work together, there's high performance, there's great job satisfaction, and so what they're looking for in their evaluation of your company, they're trying to understand who you are. And they're going to the About page, and most of the time they're not getting an answer for this question. And so I'm going to talk about how to address that need. So how do we get great people to see what we have to offer? So this is, I would say, probably the best part of this entire presentation and the result of many years of thinking about how to get great candidates and applying this to myself, applying it to our clients. And what we're calling it is the candidate's journey. And if you think about marketing, what marketing is it's trying to attract customers into your organization to purchase your goods and services. Well, as part of the marketing process, good marketers, what they'll do is they'll ask the question, where are our customers? What is their journey in terms of making a decision to buy from us? Do they go on Facebook? Do they go on LinkedIn? Do they read the newspaper? Do they look at TV? What is their journey? And good marketers map out that journey and reach out to customers at those various points along the journey. And so essentially what I'm suggesting is that as folks who care about hiring and retaining and growing great employees, that we can apply that same methodology. So one way to look at it is I think that again the conventional wisdom, we need more people, and it's a pretty straightforward path. Somebody needs a job, they apply, then they get hired, and that is so far from the truth these days. And I'm guessing there's a lot of folks on this call that'll go, that's not even close. But there's probably some who may still be thinking this is sort of the paradigm. That was the paradigm I grew up with. I thought it was a privilege that I was allowed to have a job. These days it's more of a what can you do for me attitude amongst applicants. And really the journey looks much more winding, and oftentimes there's branches that spin off of it, and even how people come onto the road may be two discrete paths in the in the upper left here. Along the way, they're going to touch various points, and what I've done is I've built a journey that's a bit of a one-size-fits-all journey for customers, and I'm going to walk you through this and show you sort of the general places people go, and you're going to have to overlay your business model on top of this to say, okay, well, that's relevant for me, but it's a little bit different in my industry, but I do think you can apply most of these points. So the first point along the way is thinking about where candidates come from, and in general, there's two paths. One is they're a passive candidate where they're content with their job. They maybe aren't necessarily looking, but if something is put in front of them, it could pique their interest. versus a dissatisfied candidate where they're really not happy with where they're working. And those two candidates will engage in different types of behaviors. You know, the passive candidate, you have to have actually a very different strategy for engaging that candidate than a dissatisfied candidate. And there's not enough time for me to go into all of the ways you can do that today, but I think just acknowledging that that's the first step along the way, and that both of those people, once they have gone into a state of awareness, they realize they want to make a change, there's something that's attractive to them. Oftentimes, the first step along the way is going to be this. It's going to be friends, families, coworkers, past coworkers, and they're going to be asking them questions. You know, hey, you know, honey, I'm thinking about changing a job. You know, they're talking to their spouse. And then what does their spouse say? You know, hey, I'm thinking about going to work at Nike. What is their spouse's perception of Nike? You know, maybe it's very positive, and so that sort of reinforces that decision, or maybe it's very negative, and so then that makes them kind of question that decision. So as a brand, and thinking about, okay, how can I influence this cohort? These are big picture questions, right? These are, how do I treat my employees so that when they're out in the workplace or they're out in the marketplace and they're talking to potential candidates, they're excited about their jobs? You know, how do I act and engage in the community to create excitement about the brand, as opposed to, yeah, working for them is so-so. And I think you'll see this theme with a lot of these steps along the way early in the journey, where it's really kind of broad-based brand awareness. This next one is something you actually have a fair control over, which is job boards and how you post ads on job boards. A lot of times people will sort of skim them, especially passive candidates. They're like, well, maybe I'm interested, I don't know. And so they'll look around, and I just pulled this off of Craigslist yesterday. So the ad on the left is for an accounting role, you know, multitasking phones, busy construction, mid-level to advanced. There's no details about the business whatsoever at all, versus the one on the right, which is, hey, we need a controller, and we're excited, and we're a growing company, and there's a lot of culture here, and they're putting photos of what's going on in the company. They've got 20 photos. I'm not a huge fan of Craigslist as a platform to market to candidates, but if you're going to use it, this is a great example of what it can be and probably should be if you want to attract remarkable employees. Doesn't mean you have to make it look like your business is a party, but what they are doing is they're showing what their culture is about. Very high level, you know, thinking about what is the brand presence out in the community. How do people see us as maybe an HR professional or somebody who's responsible for the hiring process? You know, do an audit. You know, look at what your brand presence is, because you're going to be up against that, or maybe that you're going to be alongside that, and that's going to be an asset to you. So thinking about how you're perceived in the marketplace will help inform what your strategy is for reaching out to those right fit employees. Awards, recognition, you know, along with things like civic engagement. You know, how are we behaving out in the marketplace? You know, Kinesis recently became a B Corp, which is really a symbol in many ways of our commitment to the community. It's a symbol of our commitment to the environment. It's a symbol of our commitment to employee welfare and well-being. So those are things that we've engaged in to send a signal to the marketplace. This is what matters to us. Back to the awards place, we've entered the fastest growing award for the last 5 years and won every year. That's a signal to that community that, hey, we are about growth and change and really, you know, transformation. So as I look at these, you know, kind of first 5 stages or so, or 6 stages, these are sort of big picture, with the exception of the job boards piece. These are big picture brand awareness places. So you can control some of them to varying degree depending on the size of your business. If you're a small business owner, you have a tremendous amount of control over this. If you're a large enterprise, it's going to be a little bit harder. But what I would suggest is how can I collaborate with the other departments who have some domain control over these things, so that we can begin to have a dialogue about how to, you know, create a greater awareness in the marketplace. The next step along the way, I think, is probably one of the biggest moments in the candidate's journey, and that's when they're on your website and they're looking at your company. And there are lots of ways to handle this, but many businesses, all they think about in terms of the audience of their website is the customer, as in the external customer that purchases from them. I would encourage you to start to think about how do we sell to the internal customer? How do we sell to the candidate? Or a commercial HVAC provider. They've done everything from like our culture, investing in you, their internal training program, their career opportunities, living and working in Portland, Oregon. They're really committed to recruiting great employees, and they have an awesome story. If I had more time, I'd share it with you, but it's essentially they went from about 50% turnover to almost no turnover over the course of 2 or 3 years by focusing on this really inside-out sort of strategy. And again, like I said, it's probably another webinar to talk about this, but I'll share some resources about this example at the end that you can download. Next along the line is job descriptions. How you write a job description. Is it compelling and exciting, or is it boring and unremarkable? And I think that those 2 job descriptions I shared with you on Craigslist are a great example of that. Insider information. I'm sort of surprised at the knowledge of Glassdoor. There's some companies who are absolutely attuned to it. There are other companies who have no idea it exists. For those of you who have no idea it exists, take a look at it, see if your company's on there. It will be at some point. Glassdoor is basically a transparency of what it's like to work at this company. And so as a business owner, you can actually manage that, and you can really cultivate how that Glassdoor process works. I've gotten many applications through Glassdoor, but if you don't manage it, you run the risk of not knowing what's happening there. And if you have a lot of employee problems, it's a scary venue that allows people to basically vent all the problems that are going on in your organization. So if nothing else, Glassdoor should be on your list of things that you should take a look at. And really this next stretch of the candidate's journey is all about things that you have a fair amount of control over and you can impact in a relatively short period of time, unlike brand awareness. The last 2 steps here, and I'm going to go kind of quick here, is the application process itself. How do you communicate with employees that are applying for this job? Are you setting clear expectations? Are you respecting them? Many folks will apply for a job and they'll never hear back from the company at all, even if they're terrible candidates. You really don't want them out there in the marketplace saying, yeah, I applied to that place, but they never got back to me. They then become a bit of a bad apple for you, spreading dissent out in the community. So thinking about how can we respect every applicant, even if they're not great applicants. And then similarly, the interview process, how can you respect the applicant and make them feel important? And again, even if they don't get the job, how do you make them a brand advocate so that they say, you know, I went through this application process, it was really hard, but they respected me along the way, and I didn't win out, but boy, I sure wish I would have gotten that job, and if it comes open again, I'm certainly going to apply. Wouldn't that be better if they said that than, yeah, I showed up for the interview, they were 10 minutes late, they cut it short, they didn't follow up with me, I had to follow up with them, it was unprofessional. So you can manage that, and I think it's a good idea to audit that entire process all the way through to the interview. So here's just a quick summary of what the journey looks like. I know there will be other steps along the way for some companies, and for us, we've customized this, and you can as well. But I think that the key point here is figure out what the journey looks like for your business, for your industry, for your candidates, and then start to map it out and see where your gaps are, and start to plug those holes. Nobody's going to have this perfect. We don't have it perfect. We've got tons of gaps, tons of places that we could do a better job each and every day. Our clients are working on this. We're helping them work on this. It's in many ways a lifetime's pursuit. But by attacking it as a strategic activity, I think you can move the needle in a meaningful way. Certainly we have, certainly our clients have, in terms of the performance of the business, and you can start to connect the HR function, whether you're somebody like me who is an owner and performs an HR function on the side or as part of my core duties, or you're a dedicated HR professional, you can really start to connect your value to the performance of the organization and the outcomes of the organization. So I'm a little bit over time here, but I just want to share 4 quick takeaways that I think will help you in your thought process. And first one is asking yourself how you can convey a sense of purpose and progress to a candidate. And when I say progress, what I mean is, how do you convey a sense of career progress? Is this a job where I'm going to be doing this job and I'm never going to be able to move up in the organization at all? Or is this the first step on a career ladder in this organization? People are going to be much more attracted to the ladder than the former. And you know, great employees, again, back to Dan Pink's book, they're looking for autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And if mastery is all about getting better, and how do you communicate that? You know, the Reitmeyer is a great example. They have a whole training program. It's a university program that can take an unskilled technician and turn them into a mid-level technician in 2 years, really all at their cost. Number 2, you know, what does the candidate journey look like in my industry? You know, I've talked about this a few times now. Audit that process. What does it look like if you're in B2B versus what does it look like in B2C? Those are often very different things. So in the B2B space, your candidates are probably all over LinkedIn, very possibly on Glassdoor. Yes, they're going to probably also have Facebook accounts, but really their professional lives are on those, tend to be on those venues. We know B2B really well, so I can talk about all the different strategies for that. B2C is not our core focus, so you're going to have to think about what your candidates are like there. You know, maybe you're hiring young, driven millennials right out of college. Their journey is going to look really different. You might have to look at college fairs, you might have to look at college job boards, and so forth. And then what free tools are available to help here? And I've got a whole bunch of stuff here on that URL, kinesisinc.com/talent. And I have an expanded version of this slide deck that actually lists out these resources that I'm talking about today. But some great examples of free resources are Facebook, LinkedIn for social, Glassdoor, awards. Many awards are free to enter, and they bring you brand recognition. Also, I'd say another great free tool is candid photography and an internal culture champion. So somebody who can be that person that really is fostering culture from a visible presence, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or wherever, assigning somebody that job. And it's a fun job. It's a great job. And it's really inexpensive to run that job. And then lastly, what paid tools can help my cause? I think whether you pay for these through your own internal resources of departments or you hire somebody, the biggies are, a great website. I was in a meeting yesterday where one of the employees shared, actually I wasn't going to apply for this job because the website was so bad. And this was like a real statement. And it was a highly paid engineer, made, probably close to 6 figures. And, he's judging the company based on their website. Similarly, career centers, places that are the portal for that employee who's applying. Professional photography, it's a great use of marketing dollars in terms of sharing the story and telling what the company's like to work at. There's photos of boring buildings, or there's engaging photos of team members doing things inside those buildings. And it's really the inside stuff that employees are looking for. So whether you do it as candid or you hire a professional, those can be great tools for recruitment. And then lastly, I think there's a lot to be said about recruiting videos and building an entire video that tells that story. And certainly some of these things are things that Kinesis does, but a lot of them aren't. We don't do photography. We're not really a video shop. So I'm not just suggesting these ideas because, oh, you could come hire me. I think they're actually really good things, and they're things that we've invested in. So we're just a little over time, but pretty close to the 30 minutes I committed to, and wanted to allow some time for Q&A at the end. Again, this has been fast, and there's a lot more to this, and I'm happy to go into greater detail, either on an individual basis or over email, and maybe we can answer some questions here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. Again, this is Brandon Laws, and we're going to do the Q&A portion of the webinar. Before we do, I wanted to just remind you, you'll get the slides and the recording if you attended even just a portion of today, so we'll definitely follow up. We also are giving away HRCI recertification, so a lot of you HR folks, if you need credits, we're offering 1 credit for this. So let's jump into the questions. And Sean, I actually have a question for you, for me personally, that I thought I'd start with, get my out of my selfish needs here. So if you have a lack of resources, whether you're a small company or a large company, maybe your HR and marketing really don't necessarily work together, how do you recommend really getting started? Like where do you start specifically along that journey?
Yeah. I think if you're privileged enough to have the ear of the executive team, or you are on the executive team and you have the ear of the CEO or the owner, I think that having conversations about business performance and these downstream outcomes that I shared with everyone at the beginning would be a great starting point. To say, rather than saying, hey, I want to start a Facebook page and have our culture on the Facebook page, I would love to hear, as an owner myself, I'd love to hear my HR professional, which I would love to have, but I don't. I'd love to hear them say, hey, you know what I'd love to do, Sean? I'd love to reduce turnover. I'd love to reduce our time to hire. I'd love to increase the performance of our employees by getting better employees in the chairs that we have here. And look at this information here around what an engaged workforce can do for us. And start to really kind of ask the questions, how are we doing today, and what would improvement look like? And I can guarantee you, I could go into just about any company and find room for massive improvements. And many of you probably know what those improvements are. So if you start the conversation around business outcomes and performance improvements, I think you're gonna have a much more receptive audience versus tactical implementation, versus I want to build a career center, or I want to build a Facebook page, or I want to assign a culture champion. Talk about what the outcomes that can occur, and these are real things. I mean, like I said, I've used Kinesis as a petri dish for the last 6 years on this whole idea, and we've grown 20 to 30% a year, year over year. We've had, I added it up last night. I'm like, in those 5 years, we've had 4% voluntary turnover. So basically, in that 5-year run, we've lost 2 employees voluntarily, because they wanted to go on to do different things. And the low cost of turnover that we incur is a huge strategic advantage that we have.
This next question comes from Christopher, and he asks, and I'm paraphrasing, when HR needs something and you need marketing, how do you recommend communicating with marketing? So if you're in HR and you need something updated on the website, maybe the careers page or something on social media, how do you recommend just the communication with marketing if you're pretty siloed, maybe at probably larger companies, my guess?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think that as you get larger, these departments, they start to become siloed and a little bit myopic and focused on, what their core responsibilities are. And I think that's why I tend to go towards how can I create reasons to collaborate within the organization? Because if you think about it, marketing is incented to, it depends on the company, but maybe they're incented to drive traffic to the website or create leads. They've rarely been tasked with the assignment of helping to recruit. And that's kind of a foreign language to marketing. It's becoming less and less so, especially in professional services, where the cost of an empty seat is really, really high. But I think it starts with talking to the marketing people and talking to the leadership within marketing about improving the performance of the company and what values it can bring them. You might even be able to find incentives that they're motivated by. I wouldn't be surprised if marketing wouldn't be excited by the idea of having better coworkers, to have their positions staffed with A players and top performers. So maybe it's a matter of aligning what benefits them as well as what benefits you. That's a tough one. It's not answered easily in a big organization.
And I think that was a good point, aligning really the business goals, right? And I think that's probably how you bridge that gap a little bit, is by you have a common purpose, a common mission, vision, values, and having those things in place probably help the communication piece, is my guess.
Yeah.
The next question comes from Laura. Could you speak a little to the overselling when it comes to recruiting? So my guess is, the web presence, all the recruiting process, when a company oversells itself, it maybe sounds a little too good to be true. I think that's what Laura's asking here. What do you think about that?
I think that's a real risk, and I think, I got into marketing because I believed a lot of marketing itself was overselling, and I thought it was inauthentic, and so the process of marketing we've engaged in is really about being authentic from your mission, your vision, and your values. I do believe it isn't a process of putting lipstick on a pig. You can't just make it look like it's an amazing place to work, and then people get there and they're working 80-hour weeks and turnover's rampant. I think you have to start with asking, well, what's authentic, and being true to that. And if you want to change the culture, that's an executive leadership piece. As somebody in HR or in marketing, I don't think it behooves anybody to lie. If you sell something that you're not, you're still going to have turnover, right? Because people are going to show up and they're going to be like, wait, this isn't what you sold me on, and then they're going to leave. So I think it's definitely a danger, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it. I think you see it in the tech sector a lot. I think the tech sector talks about ping pong tables and foosball and all this beer on Fridays and stuff, and then says, oh, work your ass off until you die, and those two just don't coincide.
Karen asks, which social media platforms are good for recruiting versus, on the marketing side, finding customers? And it's probably varies.
I think it totally depends.
It varies by client.
Yeah. It's going to totally vary by client. So, our customers, our clients are B2B service-focused businesses. Some are in manufacturing, but generally it's high touch, high employee employee touch. So for those types of businesses, I can speak to those. Customers are on LinkedIn. Customers are not on Facebook. Employees are on LinkedIn. Employees are also on Facebook. So if I'm thinking about going after employees, I'm certainly using Facebook. I might even be using Instagram. We've started to use that as well because it's so easy. It's so easy to tie Instagram and Facebook together. I find Twitter to be, at least for our clients, to be a tremendous expenditure of time with very little return. That's probably very different if you're a journalist. Like say you have a business that employs journalists, you would absolutely have to be using Twitter. So it's really dependent on your business model and whether you're B2B or B2C, and then even within those categories, what specific business you are. But I think high level, I would build, if I were in any company, I would build a great LinkedIn company page, and I would build a great Facebook page, and then the difference would be my Facebook page, if I'm business to business, would be about culture and the organization and less about selling to customers. If you're in B2C, the Facebook page can very much be about selling to customers, much more so than recruiting employees.
Wonderful. Well, we're right at 10:45, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time and conclude the webinar here. Sean, thank you so much for joining us. And what's the best way for people to reach out to you and connect with Kinesis and find out what kind of work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think our website's a great example of the kind of work we do. I think our blog and the newsletter, The Accelerator, is a fantastic resource. We've treated our newsletter not as a selling tool, but purely as an information and value add share. So there's articles on culture and marketing and leadership, and I'd say, you know, the best thing you can do if you want to just get better at your job is to sign up for that. If you're interested in talking to us about what we do, certainly shoot me an email and say, hey, I was on the webinar with Xenium, and I'd be happy to chat and see if we can help in some way, or even just point you in the right direction. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sean. And just as a reminder, we'll follow up probably within 24 to 36 hours with the slides, the video, and if you want to look at past webinars that Xenium has offered, go to our website, www.xeniumhr.com/webinars, and you can find all the good stuff there. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. It's been a great experience. Appreciate it.